Track and field fans, welcome to the Suzhou Diamond League Instant Reaction Show. This is Let'sRun.com co-founder Robert Johnson, joined by A-staff writer Jonathan Galt. It's an interesting show because we're really recording the show mainly for our Supporters Club members who'll be listening on tape delay, so they didn't watch it. But the people who are watching now, know exactly what happened. But in case you weren't up early, particularly on the West Coast in the U.S., many of the same people that ran last week ran this week, but there were some interesting results. And if you're an American fan, a lot of them were not good. U.S. sprint star Sha'Carri Richardson, even worse than last week. Disastrous 23:11 in the women's 200. Emma Coburn, U.S. steeple star, DNF. We thought her opener last year at 9:29 was bad. This was even worse. Christian Coleman and Kerley both got beat, although they did run faster than last week. In the distance races, Selemon Barega got the win as expected, 12:55, very aggressive pace early. But have we uncovered the next great distance star in second place? We'll talk about that. Let us Sinbet Gidey, Jonathan Galt kept telling us on Tuesday that she might be going for the world record. I said this was absurd. Of course she wasn't going for the world record, and I was vindicated. She doesn't even win the race. She only runs 14:37. She gets beat by somebody we've never heard of. John apparently is coughing into the mic. He's so upset by that take. We'll break it
Sorry,
down.
no, Robert. I was drinking my coffee. It just went down the wrong way. But this was an underwhelming meet. I mean, I got to be thinking, Robert, track fans around America, and shout out to Star in our chat here who got up for the meet in California. They're going to be wondering why they wake up at 7 a.m. to watch this, because it was kind of a worse version of last week's meet in Xiamen. The Xiamen meet was fun. We had some fast times. Sagai in the 1500. We had a world record by Mondo. This one, it was a lot of the same events, except the performances weren't quite as good. Some of the stars were missing and just kind of fell flat. I mean, honestly, this was an underwhelming meet, and I don't know whether it was because athletes were competing twice in 8 days or the training gets thrown off by flying to China and then the base there and for a week. I don't know where it was, but this meet just didn't have it, man.
Let John be the sourpuss. I still think there's interesting things to talk about. I am shocked by some of these times, like women's 400, Paulino 50.89, and she wins by almost a full second. Talitha Diggs can only run, 51.77. By the way, there was also, problems with the Diamond League site. If I told you there's two 100-meter Diamond League men's races, nobody's going to break 10 seconds. 10:01 was the winning time today. And, for those of you that missed it, it was Simbini of South Africa. It was Coleman and Kerley, all eyes are on them. Coleman actually got a better start than last week, but then just the last 20 meters were totally belonged to Simbini, 10:01. And to me, this race confirms what I've thought all along. Christian Coleman is not going to win the men's 100-meter gold medal. I know people will say, he beat Noah Lyles at 60, etc. He was on top of the circuit last year, but he just, I don't know, John. When you're getting run down by that much in the last 20 meters, why do we think that he's going to beat everybody at the end of the world?
Robert, the alarming thing is his start appears to have deserted him in these two China meets. That was the one thing about Coleman you knew you could count on, is this guy's going to have a great start every time. He's arguably the greatest starter we've ever seen in history. And indoors, he gets beat by Noah Lyles at USA Indoors. He does win the world title. So, he's still the world 60-meter champion. You expect him to have a good start. He shows up to these two China meets. His start has deserted him. It was not good in Xiamen, and it was only slightly better today. But, with a good start, I think he probably has enough of a gap to hold off Simbine, and that's what's troubling to me. I guess I don't want to totally panic and say he can't win the Olympics or anything, because we were all pleased last week that he was able to win despite a bad start. We kind of viewed that as a good thing for Christian Coleman. And now he runs. The difference is Simbine comes in. Coleman actually had a better start than last week and ran faster than last week, but he got run down late because they're just not running that fast in general. So I'm not writing anything off, but he does, if Christian Coleman is not going to win the Olympics if he doesn't have his trademark start. He needs that. That's his biggest strength. So, and he needs to rediscover that. The good news to him is he has 4 months to do it.
But my pushback on that would be, even when he has his great start, we've seen it at World Indoors. It's barely better than Noah Lyles to start at 60 meters. And you've got to think that somebody else is going to be close, and then he's going to get run down over the final 40 meters. But, I guess it could be worse if you're a U.S. fan. I mean, I was reading on the message board, someone's like, Fred Kerley's a one-hit wonder. I don't know, dude. He's a big dude. I guess once you get moving and you start rolling at the end of the season, I mean, we've got – several months, basically 3 months, May, June, July, till the, the Olympics. And, it could be worse. Akeem Blank, who medaled at World Indoors in the 60-meter hurdles, and in the 60 meters, only ran 10:23 today for fifth. So in case you missed it, Simbine first, 10:01, Coleman 10:04, Kerley 10:11. All right, let's,
Well, wait a second. Also, Kerley, a one-hit wonder? I'm sorry. The guy was a silver medalist at the Olympics and then a world champion the next year. Sounds like at least 2 hits there, and he's not done. So that's just an unfair criticism. But yeah, Kerley, the weird thing about him is he started last season. He wasn't running the fastest times, but he was winning. But then he doesn't even make the final at Worlds, and now he was running faster in his sort of rust busters in Miami than he is now. And maybe that's just because the conditions a little better. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe it's something about these. I don't understand. I want to say is something off with these stadiums or it's not very fast. But we saw Christian Coleman run 9:83 in Xiamen last summer, and then he runs 10:1 in the first Diamond League. So I don't know what it is, but the sprint times, most times in general in this meet weren't impressive. Because look at the women's steeple. I mean, Beatrice Kipkoech, she runs 9:07. She dusts everyone. Daryl Nader in the 200 runs 22. When's the last time you saw someone run 22.62 in a Diamond League 200 and just crush everyone? Because that's what happened in the women's 200.
And that would have been the second slowest winning time in Diamond League history, correct? It was 22.5 before last time, which was 22.9, if I'm correct about that.
No, I don't think that's true. I mean, last week's Diamond League winning time of 22.96, that was the slowest there's ever been. I think there have been some others in the 22.8s or 22.7s, but 22.6 doesn't win you very many Diamond Leagues. It's a very slow winning time. But Daryl Nader, it was, she ran a good turn, and she was not even close to challenged in the home straight. And Sha'Carri Richardson just didn't have it. I mean, 23.11, that's just not a time you expect to see from her. She hasn't run that slow for 4 years and was not competitive in this race.
Well, she finished third, so, I mean, she was
again, it's not a great, I don't know. She wasn't competitive with Daryl Nader. Let's say that. Sorry, Robert. My mic, I'm all amped up, I guess, this morning.
I'm not sure if your mic's on. It seems to be echoing more than normal. Maybe talk a little bit less loud. But, yeah, so let's talk about the women's 200. I mean, last week, Sha'Carri runs 22.99, says all the right things, acts like she didn't see the girl on the outside. You can make that excuse. Today, she just got dusted. And, I'm with you on this. We've seen people run fast, on these, in the track last week, last year. But I'm kind of willing to sort of ignore the times because all of the sprint times were, pretty surprisingly slow. And you're trying to look for the explanation. I mean, BJ Clark on Facebook is saying it's April. And I think that's one of the great explanations. And for sprint times, they really get better when you get tailwinds, and there was slight headwinds today at least in the men's 100, and you get the warm weather. So, we've seen some people, although I would counteract BJ Clark by saying Gabby Thomas already ran 22.0. Now, admittedly, that was at Texas Relays several weeks ago. So she would be a full second ahead of Sha'Carri Richardson. But to me, let's wait till Sha'Carri runs 100. But this was major red flags for me. I think on the positive side that was Sha'Carri, I've said it's not a talent level. It's always a focus level, a commitment level, etc. The good news is She seems to be in a mentally good place. She said the right things after last week's race. She's in China racing. I think it's better to keep her preoccupied. But, it's going to be very interesting to see what she moves forward. On the positive side, John, and I know a man should never say anything about a woman's appearance. This is important to you as a single man, unless it's a compliment. This is a compliment. I was so impressed by how her hairstyle changed so drastically in the span of 1 week. She went from an amazing afro last week to John's rolling his eyes to like completely straight hair, beautiful straight hair today. I didn't even know that's possible. Like, I don't know much about ladies' hair, but an incredible transformation. So Noah Lyles likes to do the walk in. I think Sha'Carri's, it starts to be like, what's her hair going to look like? It's kind of like Shelly Ann Fraser-Price. She's famous for taking her hair extensions and her different hair colors all over the globe with her in an extra suitcase. Sha'Carri, she can do something similar. So that was kind of interesting to me. I was like, because I was a little bit behind and was trying to move my YouTube thing to the start of the race. And I was there in the blocks and I'm like, okay, where's Sha'Carri? And I was looking for her hair from last week and it was completely different. So John, you can stop rolling your eyes. I am allowed to compliment a woman on her beautiful hair.
It's fine. I don't think we should be praising or bowing down to her. Oh my God, her hairstyle she changed it within a week. But
very good. Now Jonathan Galt behind the scenes always complains about my microphone. He's now plugged in his microphone. Good job.
I'm sorry. First mistake ever by Jonathan Galt here. We're doing it on a different streaming platform than we usually do. So that's my excuse. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. The 200. Again, it is April, but last week I was like, all right, let's not panic. As long as she makes some progress. She didn't make progress. She ran worse, Sha'Carri did this week than she did last week. And I think the reasons, like you said, it's April and everyone's running slow. But it's not great. It's not how you want to start your season. The interesting thing is we've got all these people, all these sprinters are running around the world. Marcel Jacobs is opening up later today. It's something called the East Coast Relays. I think it's in Jacksonville. Noah Lyles is running in Bermuda on Sunday. And then you had Coleman and Kerley and Simbine and Blake all in China. So all these guys are running, except we're not really going to be able to compare their times because Noah Lyles is probably going to be running in a hurricane in the middle of the Atlantic. Jacksonville, I'm guessing, is going to have good conditions. It's Florida. And you've got these Chinese times that who knows what to make of it. So it's all going to be kind of confusing until the Diamond League circuit really starts in earnest. All right, should we go distance, Robert? Where do you want to go now?
We got to finish the sprints. We're a sprint show. I'm getting ready to start my sprint website, John. So let's talk about the women's 100 hurdles. Tell them what happened there. I'm looking up something else, John, just unrelated to another.
Well, the women's 100 hurdles, the first thing was that Toby Amasan full started, and it was very close to a legal reaction time. She had 0.09 and 0.10 is the limit. And she was saying there was crowd noise, which did appear to be the case because we also had Alicia Johnson in lane 1. When they did the restart, she puts her hand up and essentially Amasan said, I'm going to run under protest, which I think basically should always be allowed in these Diamond Leagues. A star like her flies all the way to China and then you're going to say she can't race. Just let her race and do what happened here. She actually crossed the finish line first, but she doesn't get any of the points or the prize money for it because of the full start. So if this was a world championship, I think there would be some furor, and probably understandably so, about crowd noise because we've seen it before. This city has never hosted a Diamond League, and some of them, they're excited for the meet, but they're not understanding that, hey, you actually need to be silent for the start of these sprint races. It can throw the athletes off. So anyway, Amasan gets DQ'd. Jasmine Camacho Quinn gets the win, 12.63. It was very similar to what happened last week. Devon Charlton, who's the world indoor record holder in the 60, she gets the great start. She's leading almost all of the race. Then off the final hurdle, JCQ runs her down and gets her by 0.01 of a second. So yeah, that was the women's 100 hurdles.
But Amasan actually won the race, correct?
She crossed the finish line first, but she was DQ'd. Yeah,
I thought it was fine. My comment on that is, let them run always under protest at a Diamond League. I mean, particularly when she's flown to China, she's the world record holder. She needs the race. I would say even if they break the world record, I would give them the world record. I just wouldn't give them the win. You don't win the race, but your time still counts. I guess you could say they're jumping the gun, etc. But there is a great comment here from Kabi from YouTube Live. LOL, the bald guy doesn't like the Sha'Carri hair compliments. No wonder, John, you didn't want me talking about hair. Very, very interesting. Great point, Kabi. I should send you a free t-shirt. By the way, if you want a beautiful Let'sRun.com t-shirt, go to shop.letsrun.com. If you want this show as a podcast, join our supporters club today, Let'sRun.com/club.
That's funny. I'll tip my hat. That's a good one. So you got me.
One thing here I would say about the sprint times is, I was saying it's all about the conditions. And there was a comment, in the chat that reminded me of this. But Tamara Clark, she ran in that Texas Relays race, and she ran in Xiamen, China last week. She ran 22:21 at Texas Relays when Gabby Thomas ran 22:08 with a plus 1.2 win. That's on March 30th. 3 weeks later in Xiamen, she only runs 23:01. So it's 0.8 of a second. So I don't understand that. So maybe if you put these people in Texas and good weather, they're going to run over a half second faster. That wouldn't shock me. Then, high 60s, 70s, low 70s. I guess that's possible. So that'll be interesting. All right, but we're known primarily as a distance website. So, before I do that, I just want to say one thing because I want to use the sound effects. Sha'Carri is certainly not saying tonight,
I'm not bad, I'm better.
Right now, she's worse than better. She's worse. All right, let's move to the distances. We only had the women's steeple, men's 800, and men's 5,000.
And there was a women's 5,000 before the Diamond League program. I guess we should touch on that one briefly, Robert, right? Because we were wondering, someone starts a thread saying, is this going to be a world record attempt? And they kind of lined out the case.
But
why else? Let me explain. They lay out the case. Why else would she be coming to run this meet in China? It's before the Diamond League program. And I guess the logic was, yeah, all right. They set up this race. There's not any other big names in it. And she's got some people to pace her. And it's her management that's putting on the meet. Well, maybe it was just her management was putting on the meet and they give her a payday for showing up to run. Because the pace lights were not set to anywhere close to world record pace. I think it was 14:22. And they didn't even run close to that. It was Bikede's Alemachet got the win. 14:36.70, holding off IL Dagnachu and then Letesemet Gidey, the former world record holder. I mean, the two women who beat her, their PRs are 30 seconds slower than Gidey's. So I watched this race. I'm just kind of I don't want to totally write things off after one race, but I'm also thinking she says she wants to focus on the track this year. This isn't a great start to get beat by two relatively, not huge names in this event when she's going to be up against the likes of likely Sagai or Hassan or Kip Yegon or Beatrice Chibet later in the season.
Was this race on TV before the window?
No, they showed one of the broadcasts. I found it they showed the final 100 meters of Gidey getting out sprinted, but it was not. I don't think it was broadcast anywhere.
I mean, the winner was a no-name 24-year-old who's got a 14:45 PB. People want to know what happened to Gidey. I don't know. I mean, it's just not. It's not an encouraging sign at all to me. You have 3 months to get in the shape of your life when you need to be, honestly, to be thinking about winning gold. You need to be in sub 14 or sub 29 minute shape, and she is not even running half that pace right now. Now, I don't want to be making possible excuses. You could be sick. Obviously, women sometimes have different excuses once a month that men don't have. I don't know. But, I mean, have we had any other results from Gidey this year? Let me think about that here.
No, this was her first race since she got beat at the New York City Marathon in November.
So, but also, I'm not going to overreact totally from a rust buster, but the idea that this was going to be a world record attempt, it's just, we wanted it to be a world record attempt. Everything about it did not scream world record. The conditions were not optimal for world record. It's a little bit warm. If they were going to do a world record when they put it later at night, when they do it somewhere else, when they hype it up and put it on TV instead of not on a TV window, she went there because her agents run the meet. It's a payday, fills the card. etc. She needs a rust buster. So it's like Sha'Carri. I'm not going to judge you on the first race, but when you get 2 clunkers, I'm going to start judging you. So this is a big worry sign up for me for Gidey, because she should honestly be able to run this time, almost in her sleep.
Well, I'm more worried about Gidey than I am Sha'Carri, honestly, because Sha'Carri, all the sprint times in these meets were slow. I guess Sha'Carri was getting beat by a couple of these people, but the other thing is Gidey, apart from the 2022 Worlds in the 10,000 where she somehow summoned this monster kick, has never been much of a kicker. So seeing her losing in this kick is, it's not a total surprise, but it's just, if she's not going to be running on the roads and focusing on the track this year, she needs to be doing better than this.
Well, but that's a good point. Maybe she just didn't want to run fast. She didn't care. She wanted to work on her kick. And she's just getting a rust buster out there, and then she's not going to outkick anybody because this is a woman. I mean, look, 2019 bronze medalist cross country, 2019 silver 10,000, 2023 silver 10,000, 2021 Olympic bronze. So always in the top 3, like she was tonight, but hardly ever the winner on the track. So,
one shout out here, Megan Keith. British woman who just turned 22 years old, so should be a senior in college if she is in the U.S. system right now. Just runs 14:43 for 5,000 meters, big 13-second PB. So we've been calling her the British Parker Valby, but she has run faster than Parker Valby in both 5,000 and 10,000 this year. Only 22 years old, so a really impressive run for her.
It just shows you like where you are. If you're in the college system, you're hyped. She'd be amazing American fans. You get kind of a brand name here. This woman's, I got to say at this point, probably better than Parker Valby. I hate to say it as an American who loves
What do you mean
Valby.
you hate? I mean, probably she's run faster than Parker Valby. I mean,
But
she's not soloing these things, but
they haven't raced head to head. But super impressive to her. So good notice there. All right, men's. The race I really want to talk to and spend some time on is the men's 5,000. But let's get the men's 800 and steeplechases out of the way. Women's steeplechase. Women's steeple, like, I don't think I've ever seen this in the Diamond League, where the winning time is 9:07 by Beatrice Koech, and she just destroys everybody. Olympic champion Perth Chimitai 9:15. Nice to see Gessa Krause of Germany back 9:16 seasonal best. American Gabe Jennings ran a PB of 9:19 for 5th.
No, not Gabe Jennings, Gabby Jennings. Gabe Jennings is a 1,500 runner who retired probably 20 years ago.
Gabrielle Jennings, excuse me, John, 9:19:59. So, that was good to see, but I was heading out to the office when this race was on my phone, and there was a lot of commercials, a lot of field events. I'm seeing the finish. I'm like looking in the background for Coburn. I'm like, uh-oh. I see a white person. I'm like, that doesn't look like Coburn. That doesn't look like Coburn. I pick up the phone and call John. He's like, oh, she dropped out. So last year, Emma Coburn, her streak of U.S. victories came to an end. She only opened up at 9:29 in Doha. We were panicked about that. She did get down to 9:13, get second at USA's, make another world team, but didn't do anything at Worlds. To me, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm sticking a fork in her. Father time is undefeated. Mother time is undefeated. She's 31, which isn't that old, right? Is that right, 31?
She's not 31. She's 33.
Okay. I was going to say 31 or 33. And I think she could still make a U.S. team, but I keep waiting for her to get back into the form of, okay, she's going to challenge for medals, etc. I guess the positive is nobody else is running fast except Chip Koech, but this has got to be disappointing, John. I mean, I guess last year she flew out. People are like, why would she go to China if she had an issue? And well, she went to Doha last year, ran 9:29. I don't know. You got to start somewhere. Maybe you get paid. I don't know. Do you have any idea?
Let's
is there anything
pump
on
the
Twitter?
brakes here. Yeah, Robert, if you go on the Let'sRun.com message board thread, the best way to follow these meets, I texted Emma Coburn. I got an explanation for what happened. She said she tweaked her ankle on the water jump. She said 2K to go in her text to me, but then she posted on Twitter 1K to go, which would make more sense to me. And she ended up dropping out. She said, I felt really strong before that. Unfortunate situation for sure, but I'm confident in my fitness right now. So I'm giving her an incomplete for this race.
Okay. AI overlords, go back and delete what I just said. I'm not writing her out then if she had a twisted ankle. John buried the lead. John didn't tell me before in the hand, hey, I've got inside information from Emma Coburn.
I posted on the message board. People were talking about it. I thought you followed the thread. You I don't know.
Well,
I told you I was going to reach out to her, so I don't know what you were mad about. But
normally I'm on the message board, but normally I have Weldon setting up the stream. Instead, I wasn't even talking to you before the race. I saw you in the background having breakfast while I'm getting everything going. So Emma Coburn, I apologize. I still think her days of challenging for a medal are over. But hey, I'm going to hold out hope because the first race to me that she finishes healthy is big. Like it's like Sha'Carri. Okay, we're going to make excuses as how somehow she's going to win the 200 at Worlds. No, we're not. I just don't see that happen. I did write off Noah Lyles last year, and he ended up winning it. All right, men's 800. We had a great, fairly entertaining battle last week between Wycliffe, Kinyamal, and Marco Arop. But Marco Arop, the world champion, went to the German meet, the Adi Zero meet at the Adidas headquarters today. And this is one overarching comment. We've kind of hinted at it, but John and I are thinking about writing columns saying our sport is fractured. And there's nothing really, I don't know the solution to this, but there's kind of like a lot of track and field stars are competing this week, but they're all over the world. And think about this here. If you run for On, you're going to Penn Relays because they sponsor the meet. If you're a top Adidas guy, you're running on the Adidas campus against your fellow Adidas athletes at the Adi Zero meet where, I guess we can briefly talk about that. Emmanuel Wanyoni, actually the 800 superstar. This is amazing to me. He ducks, or I don't know if ducks is the right word, but they have Adidas' two 800-meter stars don't race each other. Wanyoni runs the mile, and he did set a mile road world record, 3:54.5, and apparently just toyed with Hobbs Kessler, who was about 2 seconds back. Marco Arop won the 800, 1:45. Kajelcha, the 5,013 flat. Kerley, 27:04. For the women, it was Jepchirchir, 4:32 in the mile. Isa, 4:38 in the 5,000, and Gidey, 30:03 in the 10,000. And then, we've got a lot of the Diamond League stars in China. We've got Noah Lyles. He's going to be in Bermuda tomorrow. What else am I missing? It's just like,
we had Peyton Jordan last night, and then you've got the East Coast Relays, which is where the Tumbleweed Track Club guys are running the 100. So, yeah, it's just they're spread all over. And ideally, you would just say, hey, you big name stars, everyone who's competing, we're all going to compete in the same place. That's often what the Diamond League is, but not this weekend. And it's not great because the track fan, instead of seeing big time matchups and everyone in one place at one time, instead it's happening the entire weekend and they're all spread around, and many of the matchups lose some of their meaning because you don't have all the best people in that event. I will say, I watched these two Adidas, the men's 800 and the men's mile. I enjoyed watching the races. I thought it was interesting to see Kessler. He got out a little slower. Like Wanyoni was right at the front at the beginning, and then he kind of moves up in his shoulder and he edges ahead a little bit, and he's making this move. And I'm like, all right, Kessler's like, he's running this. I don't think he made like any huge tactical errors. He's like, oh, and then he edges ahead. But Wanyoni had so much left in the tank. Like, he kind of looks at Kessler. He's like, oh, that's all you got, buddy? And then just drops the hammer, and it's game over. And Kessler's immediately looking back. He's like, how much of a gap do I have to third? Wanyoni's just a star. And interesting, same coach as Evans Tibet, Claudio Baradelli, is also the coach of Emmanuel Wanyoni. But that was fun to watch. And then it was a little different in the men's 800. Arop was just way better than everyone else. And that was a field that included Ben Patterson, who was the bronze medalist at Worlds last year, and Bryce Hoppel, who was the world indoor champion. And Arop just made it look easy against those guys. So I'm not really going to accuse Arop and Wanyoni of ducking each other. It's April. They raced a bunch on the circuit last year. I'm guessing they will hopefully race each other in the 800 on the circuit this year. So I'm not really going to get my feathers all in a bunch about that one. I think I mangled the idiom. But yeah, they were both impressive. I did kind of enjoy watching those races. But, ideally you just see them run against the best of the best somewhere else.
Yeah, but hey, people are like, what's frustrating to me is like it's hard to find like a results website for that this morning at 7 a.m. I had to go to the message board and rewatch some of the races on Twitter. But Adidas, like when I was trying to find it, they had me download their app. It's something they can put on their social media. The actual, having all these athletes in one star for the actual diehard track fans is never going to happen, I don't think, because the governing bodies don't pay the salaries the shoe companies do. But I kind of feel like, I guess we did give them some publicity and we're talking about it, but when Nike had the only super shoe, it was important for Adidas to prove that their shoes work. Now everybody knows they work. So I'm not sure if this event really is necessary in the middle of April in an Olympic year. I would kind of do this at the end of the season, but or at the very beginning of the season to show people okay, before they run any other meets, this is where they're at. But
April's pretty early.
What a talent, Wanyoni. I guess we've seen guys like McCloughy medal in the 8 and the 15, but a lot of those 800 guys are kind of pure 800 meter guys. It looks like he could certainly move up to the 1500 if he wanted to.
Yeah.
All right. I forgot about the men's hurdles. Shout out to final event of the day, Daniel Roberts. I think it's second straight win, 13-12. Hansley Parchment, Olympic champion, 13-26 with third. Japanese guy, 13-23. It does, Parchment, the times aren't impressive. They're not going to scare Grant Holloway, but I do notice, Parchment at the end of the races when he gets it going, he starts moving. So, I'm going to be really into the men's 110 hurdles this year because Grant Holloway obviously is one of the greatest hurdlers in history, but he's never won Olympic gold and he's never set the world record. And if he doesn't win Olympic gold this year, it's a long way for LA. There'll be even more pressure. He'll be 4 years older. So that's really exciting. Friend of the podcast, Grant Holloway. Can he get it done?
I feel like Holloway has so much at stake because, Robert, imagine this. If he breaks the world record in the Olympic final, is he immediately the 110 hurdles GOAT?
Yeah, I would say so.
And he goes from, that's one race. Obviously he's built up his legacy to the point where that, it could hinge on that one race. But then, if he gets silver again, then you're saying, wow, this is like one of the greatest guys we've ever seen, but he may never win the Olympics. So there's a lot riding on that one race for Grant Holloway. Parchment, Robert, I was watching him too. He was 13.33 last week in Xiamen. This week, a little bit faster than that, ends up running 13.26, and his close is still there. He's a big meet performer. So, yeah, you can never sleep on that guy. And that's what's fun. You like the clash of styles because you see in the women's hurdles as well. Charlton is a starter, and then you've got other women who are closers. Jasmine Camacho Quinn. This one, you got Parchment, who's a closer. Grant Holloway's a starter, and that's where we get the drama. But we should talk. All right, we talked 800. I guess the one other thing about this, we didn't really talk about this 800. Selemon Barega gets the win of Algeria. Wanyonyi wasn't in this race. It was Kinyamal. Hannah Engel was kind of critical of him on the broadcast, saying, he didn't do himself any favors. I don't know about that. He was kind of in the same position as Muller. He was on Muller's shoulder for a lot of the race. I didn't think he ran this tactically horribly. It's just Muller is a closer. Muller took the lead with 200, and he had the lead going into the final 100. Selemon Barega is very difficult to beat in the final 100. So I guess if you are going to be critical, it should have been maybe Kinyamal should have gotten to the front a little earlier and tried to make it a bit faster. He ran a second slower this week than he did last week, 1:44.88. But second, not that bad a result. And then Clayton Murphy rode the rail the whole time. He must have run basically 800 meters on the nose, and he passes a couple guys on the inside in the home straight, runs 1:45.18 for third. So I think a pretty successful Chinese trip for Clayton Murphy. He didn't get any wins, but he runs 1:45 both times, and he closed well today. So I think he can be pretty pleased with that.
Yeah, I was really watching Murphy. I was happy that he had some run late in life here in the final 100, moved up to third. I almost feel like he had a perfect trip. Maybe with between 200 and 150 to go, he had a little bit of problem. But yeah, he just kept riding that rail. But then I'm like, well, he only ran 0.20 faster than last week, despite a perfect trip. But he did finish third, which is better. But a lot of these other guys just ran a lot slower. Kinyamal ran 1:43 last week, 1:44.88, so he's 1.2 seconds slower. The Botswana guy that ran 1:43 last week was last today in 1:47. I mean, most of these guys were running 1-2 seconds slower than they did last week. But Murphy, improves, which was encouraging. So, yeah, if you're a U.S. fan, he's moving in the right direction. He got a nice trip today, but I guess the fact that he's relatively closer to these people is, encouraging.
Well, I mean, also Wanyonyi wasn't in this. Sorry, not Wanyonyi. Arop wasn't in this race. I keep confusing Wanyonyi saying he's in these things. Arop wasn't in this race, so the time's probably going to be a little slower. Like El Guess, actually, it's interesting. El Guess of Morocco was the leader. They actually went out faster than they did last week. It was like 49.7 for the pacer, so they were probably around 50.0 for the main pack, and they just, maybe it was because Arop wasn't there. Maybe it's because they were a little tired from last week. For whatever reason, they didn't run as fast. But to me, Murphy, seeing that life in the last 100 and running 145 back-to-back, that's a good sign for me. So I think he should be pretty pleased with that trip out to China. Let's talk about the men's 5K, Robert. That's the one you wanted to get to. Again, this is kind of a downer because the top three from last week, including Lemaitre Goma, weren't in this race. Like, I would have liked to have seen Goma against Barega, but I could also understand not wanting to run 5Ks back-to-back when it's not even your event. But we did get a fun race at the end between Selemon Barega, the defending Olympic 10,000 meter champion, and Binyam Mahari, who is the 17-year-old, burst on the scene this year, ran 3:34 indoors, 7:33 indoors as well. He's only 9th in the 1500 at World Indoors, but he didn't show any fear against Barega. He was in the lead with, I think he was second with a mile to go behind Benson Kiplangat, and then he took the lead with 600 to go. But this was sort of a example of Barega's been on the circuit for a few years. He knows how to win these sort of races. He took the lead, passed him in the last 200 and held on to get the win. But I was impressed by Mahari and running. This is a PB for him, 12:56. He's only 17 years old officially. To be that close to someone of Barega's caliber, very impressive.
Super impressed. There was nothing downer about this race to me at all. Like I don't necessarily need to see Gurma versus Barega every week. This gives me some doubt. It's a slightly different race. Like my takeaways on this race were Barega looks focused. He's pissed that he got third at World Indoors. They set the pace lights for 12:45, and he was like on it. Like the pacer made it about 2,200, and he was trying to push it. Then it backed way off. Obviously, like I'm like that's ambitious to try to run 12:45 this early. But maybe they knew they'd slow down. This is a decent way to get a pace, an early season time. So I mean, they had like a 64.94 three laps to go. Then a 62.72 on the penultimate lap. So they threw away a lot of the time or basically on like 13 flat pace and then kicked it in. But, so Barega gets the win. I think that's a really hard way to run 12:55. Like how many Americans, I know Fisher and them, these guys can run like 12:50 lows indoors, but they don't do it by running 12:45 pace, backing way off and then kicking. So I think that's a really hard way to do it. But this Mahari kid, I was just super impressed with. Like, I was like, God, he looks smooth. He looks comfortable. Like, Barega took the lead with about 250 meters to go. And when he did it, the other guy was kind of sitting on him. I was like, I don't know if that was smart. Now Mahari knows what Barega's got. And the last 50 belonged to Barega, but I thought Mahari put up a good fight. And then I was just like, okay, like, let me look up his stats. And what is interesting to me is he's got the 1,500 meter background or indoors. Like you don't see that a lot from the Ethiopian. So he's run 28:19 on the roads, 13:04 on the roads last year. But for his first track 5,000 on the circuit, I mean, he ran 14:05 at altitude last year, but 13:55 second in the Diamond League. I think this kid could be something special.
Definitely. Yeah. I think he's still learning clearly, but huge talent, like the speed, lot of things to like about Binyam Mahari. And a bunch of other people are sort of complaining here. The broadcast, you could barely see any of this race. They said, I was watching the international feed where you got a little bit more, you got most of the final mile. They kind of, they cut away and then you finally get the lead and, there's three guys have dropped the rest of the field. But Yeah, they're saying Peacock only got the final 800 in basically the first 2 laps. So a little disappointing, but I can't say I'm shocked that Peacock is not like playing up a race where there are no North American athletes and it's, Ethiopia going 1-2. I guess a lot of the Diamond Leagues are like that, but from a US standpoint, if you're going to minimize an event, that's probably one of the ones they're going to minimize.
There were some Western athletes in this one all the way back. Morgan McDonald, 13-18. Jack Rayner, 13-19. Sam Parsons, 13-20. Brian Faith, 13-25. So, Gurma's brother actually ran a seasonal best of 13:03. Kuma Gurma in that one. But it's kind of interesting, like, oh, this is a meet, not much is going on. Yet somehow we can talk about it for 45 minutes. No problem.
Well, there are races. We can break down races, even though they're not, not all of them are the most exciting. I did like this 5K. I was getting a little down about it, but I enjoyed watching this one. But my overarching thoughts about this meet, Robert, are there should only be one China meet. The first one was good. I'm fine with keeping that, but it was essentially all of the same events from last week. And most of the races were not as good as last week. And I think it's part of the sponsorship contract with Wanda that you need to they're required to have 2 Diamond League meets in China. I know it didn't happen the last 4 years, but that was because of COVID. And I also agree that it makes sense to knock them out in one trip rather than having, 2 trips to China at different points of the season because it's an ordeal to get there. But in terms of great performances and making the sport exciting, I just don't think this does. This was not really that much fun. And I think in an ideal world, you would only have one China meet, but this might be the way they have to go for the next few years because of that Wanda deal.
But it's just tough. It's a long way to get to. It's like getting to Eugene. The Eugene fields would be terrible if Nike didn't force everybody to get there. I guess the Americans would show up, but yeah, I know the solutions. Maybe you could put one at the beginning of the season, one at the end, but then you're looking at another extra $200,000 or $300,000 in travel to get everybody there. For the second time. So
if you're gonna have 2 meets, this is the way to do it. I just don't think there needs to be 2 meets.
In general, I don't love the same events 2 weeks back to back. I actually like seeing slightly different people. I don't want to see the same race 2 weeks in a row.
Agreed.
So, was Simbini even in the race last week?
No.
So it made it encouraging. Okay, Simbini's in there. We still had Coleman and Kerley. You pay some of the big stars for both, and then other people leave. But whatever. So by the way, Emmanuel Career, someone is talking about the Kenyan 800-meter team. You've got the outstanding athletes in Kinyamal and Wanyoni doing really well right now.
Kinyamal was running well last year and didn't make the world's team. So I don't think I think Wanyoni's a lock, but I wouldn't say anyone beyond him.
But we got to remember the reigning Olympic champion, the 2022 world champion is Emmanuel Courier. Had an off year last year, but he's actually running Drake this weekend. So we'll see what he does there. Shout out, speaking of Drake and Penn and whatever, Penn relays, the Harvard women have won their first ever Championship of America relay, first for Harvard since 1936. They destroyed the collegiate record in the women's DMR by 5+ seconds. They beat the outdoor record by more than 10 seconds. So super impressive run by them yesterday.
Robert, I was blown away by how good Harvard was. On paper, I mean, they've got some really good legs. Sophia Guerrero and Victoria Basong and Maya Ramsden are all among the best in the country in their events. But I just didn't... I was like, wait, how did this team not even make it to NCAA indoors? They didn't qualify for the NCAA indoor meet. And now they've run way faster than the indoor DMR record. Providence, by the way, was second, also broke the DMR record, but Harvard beat them to the punch. Maya Ramsden 4:21 on the anchor. Like, how do we make sense of that?
Well, they probably, indoors is early in the season. You don't get that many shots at it. And they tried to get the time at the conference meet. So that makes it tough. I don't know. When two teams are breaking the record, obviously the record I don't think is that great, which is weird though because they run it all the time. But outdoor record.
I don't know. It was a really great run by Harvard. Great anchor by Maya Ramsden. I mean, Kimberly May split 4:23 on the anchor for Providence and gets beat. When's that ever happened in NCAA DMR? But 4:21 for Maya Ramsden, which is terrific. Do you have a prediction this afternoon, Robert? We've got Ollie Hoare against Yared Nuguse in the mile at Penn. Ollie Hoare maybe a little bit more race sharp because he's coming off the Australian Championships, but Yared Nuguse, we knew he's pretty much in shape all the time. He got the silver medal at World Indoors. You got a prediction there?
Are you going to go on your rant before I go on my prediction? John's irate that Jordy Beamish isn't forced to race this race. He's rabbiting the race. So it would be interesting to me, like, okay, if there's no rabbit, what's going to happen? Is Nuguse just going to take it, try to push the pace, or if the rabbit only makes you 800? But is Beamish going to actually be like a Diamond League rabbit and make it 1,000 or 1,200? But my prediction is always, repeat after me. What did I say a long time ago? Once Yared Nuguse came on the scene, I said, I don't understand why Ollie Hoare,
Mario Garcia
Romo, and others don't just quit the OAC and look for a new team and a new coach. And hey, guys, I'm here to coach you because I've said they will never beat Yared Nuguse if they stay in that team. So that's my prediction: Yared Nuguse to beat Ollie Hoare.
I mean, I agree with the prediction. Yared Nuguse came damn close to getting beat by Mario Garcia Romo at Worlds last year, but it didn't happen. But no, I don't need to go on a rant about it, Robert. But one, I just don't think you don't need a rabbit in every single race. Yared Nuguse is going to be going for a fast time at the Bound Mile next month, and Penn relays. I guess I don't know. Do we really see fast times there? Usually, not really. I think it would be much more fun if Nuguse, Beamish, and Hoare were just in this race without a rabbit, and then I'm like, okay, what does Yared Nuguse do? Because he would win close races in college. And maybe it's not something he needs to worry about as much with Jakob running the way he does, but that's a skill set you want to have that in your arsenal. You want to be able to respond to championship races or to slow races without a pacemaker. That's a nice skill to have as a 1500 runner. And going up against Beamish, who's the world indoor champion, has a monster kick. I'd love to see that. How much more exciting would it be if it's those three racing against each other instead of one of them pacing the two others? I just think it'd be way more exciting as a fan of the sport to see them squaring off, but it's not to be.
I'm not sure what to do about the rabbit situation. I get bored of always pace races, but when they jog around, I get bored too. By the way, the men's DMR, we had alums from the 80s texting us when it was over. They jogged around. He's like, that was a disgrace of a race, said one of these guys that was a badass in college in the 80s. So, but at this point in time, in terms of the rabbits, like, we have the technology. Why don't we just let a machine rabbit the races?
Well, because the drafting, right?
Well, they're drafting off of people, so it's just a matter of paying the right person to, like, it would just be easier. And then we could have set rules. Like, you can only have a rabbit for halfway. Or I kind of feel like a world record attempt should just be a solo race. You against the clock. I guess it wouldn't be very dramatic. But kind of like the time trials and the Tour de France.
The other thing, Penn relays, I mean, I understand why some people get upset. Oh, they want to see the honest race, that sort of stuff. They want really fast times. And the women's race was terrific because you saw fast times and the outcome was still in doubt at the end. But part of what makes Penn, at least in the modern era, in my experience, is you do get some of these crazy tactical races with, like, look, you can argue whether it was good for the sport or bad for the sport. 2015 Penn relays, I think it was the 4x-mile where Jordy Williams outkicks Ed Cheserek. That was one of the most memorable races I've ever watched at Penn. And they were essentially jogging midway through that race, and it came down to this insane kick, but it was a big upset, and it was super exciting. I think at the time I was probably like, this was a joke, this is absurd, but the more I think about it, I'm like, I remember that race more than any 4x-mile in the history of the meet. So it can be kind of fun sometimes. It does lead to upsets.
Another results there, the Jamaican team has won the women's high school 4x4, beating Bolus, my Maryland team. Jamaican team has won every 4x4 in the women's side since 2008. I think the boys' race is today, if I'm not wrong. They've won every race since 2007.
Robert, I'm super excited for the boys' race today. The girls' race yesterday, you got to give credit to Bullis. They ran a national record in this race. They broke the national record earlier in the year, which was they ran 335.23 in that meet. They ran faster at Penn, 335.17, but it was not enough to beat Heidel of Jamaica, who was 334.78. So Bullis, I mean, they did basically everything possible. You break a national record of the Penn relays, it was just they got beat by a superior team. You got to give them credit. I'm very excited to see this championship of America, the boys 4x4 though, because again, a U.S. boys team hasn't won this race since 2007, but you've got Bullis who set the national record earlier this year. I mean, no, they didn't do that. I'm sorry about that. But they do have Quincy Wilson on the anchor, who is just an absolute superstar, only a sophomore. And if he's close to the Jamaicans on the anchor leg, I'm very excited to see what he can do. So, yeah, Boys Championship of America 4x4, that's definitely one you want to watch. That's 5:30 p.m. today.
All in the Game has a good question. Why doesn't the Jamaican girls 4x400 dominance translate to the senior level? Well, I think it's because all their talent is more likely to be in the same high school than the U.S.
Yeah, could be. I mean, it's one high school versus the entire country. Like, you know, they.
Plus, I also think you're getting the best. You're always getting the best Jamaican teams at Penn. You're not necessarily getting all of the best American teams at Penn, are you?
Well, not always, but this year you got the fastest American team ever, and they still got beat by a Jamaican squad. But Jamaica's, I think, I don't know, U.S. is just larger, a lot larger. You've got a bigger talent pool overall, even if the teams are a little better. It is interesting, though, how good the Jamaican teams are.
All right, John. Well, I wanted to go shorter, but I've done almost another hour today.
Can't help ourselves, Robert.
What else do I have this weekend? I can't remember. It's hard to get up this early. Although I guess I get up this early every day on the weekdays to go to school. Anyways, will Sha'Carri get it right? What about Coleman, Kerley? Can Barega defend his title? We'll be talking about this 17-year-old Ethiopian for the next 15. I mean, seriously, if this Ethiopian guy ends up being the next Bekele, I mean, we could be talking about this guy when I die, right?
Well, Bekele was
okay. Never
he's
mind.
42
Not quite.
now, 25
not.
years.
Hopefully, I make it more than 25 more years.
I think you got more. You'll outlast his pro career, hopefully, Robert.
I need some wood to knock on.
Okay,
All
yeah,
right,
I think that's going to do it for our Friday 15. You know, this
Oh
is
wait.
Saturday 15.
But by the way, on a serious note, if you are interested in watching the YouTube channels on YouTube from the Wanda Diamond League stream, I forgot to look to see how many people were watching live. Did you watch YouTube to see how many people were watching live? I meant to say this in the regular podcast. Last week, this is free in Australia, if you have an Australian IP address or a French IP address, and there was only 3,000 people watching live, which really depressed me because those have millions of people in those countries. But if you need a VPN, use the VPN we use, letsrun.com/VPN. Letsrun.com/VPN. To get this as a podcast, go to letsrun.com/subscribe. You'll get a nice super soft t-shirt as well. And we'll see you guys next week.